So when you look at instructional technology and it gets a bad rap in terms of, oh, it's replacing a teacher. No, it's enhancing a teacher. Great instructional technology enhances a teacher to meet the needs of all of their students.
Hello there, my name is Monica Burns and welcome to today's bonus episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. If you're used to joining me on Tuesdays for new episodes, you are in for a treat. This is a special bonus episode of the podcast in partnership with UWorld. Just like on Tuesdays, these bonus episodes are designed to give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. If we mention something you'd like to check out, you'll find the link to it in the show notes. So don't forget to head to my website, easyedtechpodcast.com, or of course, you can go to classtechtips.com and click on the podcast button for all of the links and the resources from today's episode. This episode is sponsored by UWorld College Readiness, helping you prepare students for college and beyond. UWorld's courses for AP bring everything needed for AP success into one easy-to-use platform. From saving you time with ready-to-use instructional materials to building student confidence and mastery with rigorous practice and effective exam prep, UWorld helps ensure you and your students have what you need to excel. Visit collegereadiness.uworld.com to learn more and access some of their free activities and lessons. That's collegereadiness.uworld.com. This bonus episode is titled Using EdTech to Set AP Students Up for Success, a bonus episode with UWorld. And I chat today with Philip Bates, the Director of College Readiness at UWorld. He's a former high school principal, and we talk today about ways to boost the academic confidence of students and help them prepare for AP success before they even start classes, while they're starting a new AP class, and throughout the entire school year. Whether you're teaching an AP class, know other educators who are, or just curious about what it takes to prepare students for success, you'll definitely want to listen in to today's conversation. And I share a fun fact or tidbit about my AP experience as a student that you may want to look out for in our conversation. Let's go ahead and jump in. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to chat with you today about setting up students for success throughout the school year. But before we jump into all of that, can you share with listeners a bit about your role in education? What does your day-to-day look like?
Sure. Well, great to be here. Thanks, Monica. So I am the Director of College Readiness at UWorld. And prior to that, I was in public ed for 18 years, mostly as a principal. Mm-hmm. And, there's aspects of my job that aren't much different in terms of instruction. So my job is like being in instructional planning meetings all day. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we sit with my fantastic, folks that work for me that are former AP teachers. Some of them just out of the classroom. Mm-hmm. Some of them, been out of the classroom for a little while. And even some are still in the classroom. And we just talk AP instruction all day and come up with really fantastic ways to support students and teachers.
Fantastic. And just that perspective, right, of hearing from lots of different folks with a variety of experiences, even though there's some clear similarities, must be just so informative for the work that you do. And, today we're talking about AP readiness and success. And for a listener who maybe hasn't spent much time in the AP world, what exactly does an advanced placement class entail?
Sure. So what's great about AP classes is it's rigorous college level material in this nice, supportive high school environment. The data tells you that AP classes are absolutely, indicative success in AP classes, indicative of success in college courses. So you've got that tie-in together. And then you obviously had the pass a AP exam at the end of that AP course and save that money and get that college credit. And so it's certainly rigorous. It's a college level course. And it's taught by high school teachers who have all those wonderful instructional talents to make really, difficult content, obtainable for students.
And for, as we kind of think about what that looks like in practice, and you mentioned just some of the rigor that's involved, what are some ways educators can help students build a strong foundation before they even tackle AP level material?
Yeah. So, I think that's certainly AP teachers appreciate any work that's done prior to those AP classes. And we've got pre-AP courses, we've got honors courses, but a lot of students maybe aren't on a pre-AP or honors path and still can decide to take AP courses. So I think it's really important for all educators to be doing things to get students ready for AP courses. Some of those things, I would say the biggest thing is academic confidence. You want students to be good problem solvers. You want students to, obviously be good at reading for meaning, good at text evidence writing. And those type of instructional activities prior to AP help make students successful in that AP level.
Yeah. And just, as you're mentioning some of those pieces, right, I can imagine how that fits into a variety of subject areas, right? And a variety of different spaces where students are probably doing some of those things, but maybe there's just the intentionality that might change a bit for an educator who knows, right, this is where students may head, right? A year after they're with me, or a semester, or 2 years, whatever it might be. But for someone, who might be teaching an AP class, if a student seems unprepared for the rigor of an AP class, what are some of those first steps teachers can take to support those students?
Yeah, very common. I mean, as educators, when we kick off the year for our AP course, there's a lot of students that maybe that teacher might almost immediately identify and go, they're not quite there and they're not quite ready. And I think our great educators out there embrace that challenge. And I think they, we take every student that walks into our room and we do our very best to get them through that course. And, I think part of that is intervention early.
Yeah.
I think part of that is if they haven't built that academic confidence, helping lay out that, growth mindset for that student, that productive struggle of, hey, AP is going to be hard. You're going to struggle. You're not going to step in here and just be fantastic because, it's difficult, rigorous material. And that means we're going to have to fill in some gaps. And that means we're going to have to maybe teach you how to be a good note taker and teach you how to actively read. And we might have to go back and do a whole lot of shared writing activities and do lots of different foundational things, as long as that student has the mindset of, I want to work, I want to grow, I want to get better. I'm okay if I fail something, learning it and making some course correction. I think if there's that mutual, respect from both student and teacher, I think there's going to be a lot of success there. But I definitely think there's interventions that AP teachers have to commit to, because it's not just going to happen by magic. Yeah. It's going to actually take some purposeful planning on their part instructionally.
That academic confidence piece, I think, is so interesting. And, I could see it being a challenge for students who maybe have always felt successful before they walked into an AP class too, and now they're in this space that requires maybe a different kind of work that they've done before. If, they entered that space because things in the past may have come naturally or easier. So I think that's such a thread that might go, through a wide variety of student experiences. So I'm so glad that you flagged that piece, because I think, for many educators, right, in a classroom environment, right, you might not label it, right, as such, even though you're building towards that level of academic confidence.
Absolutely.
So as we, think about, the impact here, I've probably shared this in past podcast episodes and definitely in casual conversations with educators who maybe have children of their own who are, taking AP classes. But AP classes had a massive impact on my educational experience. I actually went, and it was, I don't want to say the top factor, but it was a big factor of deciding where I was going to go for my undergraduate degree, because they took my AP class credits. It saved me a year, almost. I had to make up a little bit along the way in terms of, my progress, my choices, and the cost, right, of going to school, which has only increased in the time since that all happened for me. So how, can teachers help students transition from, a surface level learning to this deeper, more analytical thinking if they're motivated to take AP classes like I was, as a high school student?
Yeah, and I think that goes to the instructional practices of that AP teacher. And those instructional practices, obviously there's a lecture component, and there's always going to be a lecture component with any course.
Yeah.
And I think, you take that lecture component and then you bring other instructional tools in. And specifically, a lot of things that we build at UWorld is to help that teacher differentiate in that classroom. Is to provide that teacher instructional activities that maybe help students learn how to think the right way, as far as being inquiry-based thinking. Not just what's the answer, it's how you got to the answer and what did you do to get to that answer. And so I think when the teacher is pairing good lecture with appropriate student responses, and maybe that's project-based learning. Maybe that's really diving into FRQs. And FRQs, free response questions in the AP world, for students to truly understand the concept.
Yeah.
And by putting them in those situations where you're getting students to absolutely master content and understand, where the pitfalls come in, what they need to do to kind of get to that next level, I think that's critical. And I think that if you're just a teacher talking 80% of the time, you're not going to understand what students don't know.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the right tools to engage them and to bring out their learning and bring out their engagement, you are going to struggle to get them where they need to be.
Yeah. And, you mentioned this idea of differentiation too, and for a class like an AP class that might on the surface feel very leveled or homogeneous, right?
Sure.
Sometimes differentiation feels like it doesn't have, right, the same sort of place it would in a classroom with students with a wide range of abilities. Can you speak a little bit more about what differentiated instruction can look like in an AP class?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is understanding that you're not going to have that homogeneous makeup. If you're a new AP teacher especially, you can't expect all your students to come in with all those prerequisite skills.
Right.
And so I think you need to, you accept that piece. And then you understand too that some of your high achievers may have some gaps.
Yeah.
Ultimately, every student has some gaps in specific areas. And a lot of that comes from, what do they like to do? What does their aptitude lead them to be good at naturally? And it goes back to that growth mindset of every student needs to find their gaps and make those no longer gaps. But in terms of the teacher, I think it starts with constant formative assessment. And so what we always do is we support AP teachers in saying, hey, you've got this big, huge exam at the end of the year. But really, your ability to get comfortable and get students comfortable with that level of assessment starts on the first day.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're going to throw 15 AP questions at a student, but it does make sure that teachers are starting to build that awareness of, this is how concepts are tested, this is what you need to get comfortable in. And then it starts, I think it forces teachers to then know where students are with the assessment to lead to differentiation, and to say, all right, I need to make sure that I'm bringing these skills in and these skills in for all my students, but specifically for these particular students. Pulling small groups in AP classrooms is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And I think that when you see teachers embracing that, and you see teachers understanding that I need to make sure I'm providing instruction not only globally for all my class, but also, into small groups like that, I think that's a great piece as well. But I think oftentimes Teachers want to provide that differentiation. They just don't have the tools to do it. And the tools that they do have, they've pieced together and grabbed from lots of different places. And that's a challenge because it's not always at that AP level, or maybe it's an outdated, content piece, because AP is constantly changing. College Board every year is coming in and evaluating their courses, evaluating their exams, and they're pulling things out and they're reorganizing things. And I think as long as teachers are provided with the instructional tools they need, they know how to differentiate. It's a very natural thing for a teacher.
And just that idea of helping, use that time to help kids build more confidence, like we've talked about, comfort level with the material. I'm curious as to, what role reflection or self-awareness would play too here in helping students grow in these challenging courses.
Sure. So one of the things that we try to help teachers with is immediate feedback for students. And you've got a class of 35 AP kids and, maybe 17 of them got something wrong. Well, it's absolutely impossible to go to each one of those 17 students and learn where that misconception is. And so what we provide for teachers is material that gives that immediate feedback through explanatory explanations. And explanatory explanations is not something I would say as a typical high school term, because typically explanation comes from the teacher. And teachers have just enough time to say, you got this wrong, and here's why you got it wrong. They tend to not have the time to go to each individual student and say, here's where your misconception was, here's the skill you missed, here's a quick mini lesson on what the skill entails. That's what we do. So we provide, in our materials, immediate feedback to a student, so this particular student can go, that's why I missed it. And I can click on this link and it can fill in that gap because I was out at a band trip and missed that day of instruction. Or here's a quick little video that a teacher can push out because she knows that this group of students missed a lecture, and here's the PowerPoint that goes with it. And so she can keep on moving, he or she can keep on moving, and that student can get that immediate feedback, get right back into things, and kind of move forward.
And just that type of personalization, having that content that's really responsive to what an individual student needs, I would imagine has a big impact on student engagement. So can you tell us a little bit more about, the ways that instructional technology or digital tools can help kids stay engaged and just help students better prepare for AP success?
So when you look at instructional technology, and it gets a bad rap in terms of, it's replacing a teacher. No, it's enhancing a teacher. I mean, great instructional technology enhances a teacher to meet the needs of all of their students, to allow them to engage students, not just with them and their dynamic personality and their exciting teaching, but allow them to work through activities that are engaging. I would say, if you do instructional technology right, and we take a lot of pride in what we do, the visuals are huge. I mean, teachers don't have time to work with professional artists and build these amazing visuals, and they don't have time to make these incredible videos that engage students. But they certainly have the time to, review and deploy things that will help them move their students forward. And I think that's, if technology is used the right way, it does nothing but enhance a teacher and just make hopefully their jobs a little bit easier, or just allow them to gain that little bit of movement forward with a particular child. Because if a child's not successful over time, they start to give up. And obviously that's got to happen. And I think instructional technology has helped and continues to help and move forward. And we take a lot of pride in doing things that will make a teacher's life easier.
I really like how you frame that, because I think so much of, this access to technology isn't just about having it, right? It's about using it to do all the things that you just said and really, scaling our impact. Sometimes I think of it as like, what's on my wish list? I just don't have enough time to do, create those visuals that you mentioned, right? I know that would be a great thing, but I might not have the time, right? Or the capacity, right? To take that on. And so I think that's what makes, this type of platform so, interesting and exciting, for educators. So tell us a bit more about UWorld.
Sure.
How does UWorld support teaching and learning in AP environments?
Sure. Well, we talked a little bit about College Board. College Board changes things constantly. They're constantly tweaking their courses and doing that type of thing. Because we are an online learning platform, we are able to make those changes very, very quickly and be very responsive to those changes. So, I would say previously teachers relied on giant textbooks.
Yeah.
And as students, I think, let teachers know that they're not really into the giant textbook anymore.
Yeah.
I think it is a perfect space for us to come in. We have a wonderful ebook. And one of our foundations is this ebook written on a student level. Doesn't have a bunch of jargon that students won't need for the course. Can constantly be updated, has lots and lots of visuals. We do blocks of text that are small because we know students, specifically now, you hear teachers say, I can't assign 15 pages of reading to my class. They're not going to read those 15 pages. And so there's ways around that with our ebook. We also provide a ton of just instructional materials, all written by a cohesive AP team that teachers can trust. And that old school of pulling a variety of things from a variety of shelves and piecemealing them together, we eliminate that from them. So they can focus on student achievement, connecting with their students, preparing great lessons. That's what we want to do is be that additional resource for teachers to get the most out of their students.
And I think, in our conversation today, just unpacking, what's possible for all students who enter into these environments, both that prep piece, building that confidence, and then once they're there, making sure, that they're fully supported. I really appreciate you taking us through, what this might look like in a classroom, in a school, in a district. And, we'll connect out, of course, to all the resources so people can explore UWorld. But for someone who's listening, who's on the move today, making that mental bookmark of where to go later, where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more about your work?
Yeah, we would love for people to go to collegereadiness.uworld.com. That is a wonderful source of information, not only on our resources, but we've got some great blogs that can support AP teachers. We've got some case studies. We've got, some webinars. I do some webinars occasionally to support AP teachers. And it's UWorld with the letter U, collegereadiness.uworld.com. And we would love for teachers to also, you can check out our materials there. You can check out our resources. You can look at some questions. You can look at those explanatory explanations and give you a little bit of idea what we're all about and how we can support AP teachers, because they've got super challenging jobs. And they, like you said, they want to engage all of their students, and we know that they don't all come to their classes raring to go. They need that additional support and those instructional resources.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I know people will want to dive in, and I'll make sure all the links are there ready for them to find.
Awesome. Thank you, Monica. Enjoyed it.
This was such a fun and informative conversation with Philip Bates from UWorld. And I want to finish up today, like we always do, with a few key points from today's episode. Academic confidence is foundational for AP success. Early intervention helps struggling AP students thrive. Differentiation matters, even in AP classrooms. Instructional tech should enhance, not replace, teaching. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from this episode by heading to easyedtechpodcast.com. That's where you'll find all of the ways to connect with the team at UWorld. Thank you again to UWorld College Readiness for sponsoring this episode. Find out why students and teachers love UWorld's courses for AP by heading over to collegereadiness.uworld.com today and check out their content. That's collegereadiness.u with the letter U, WORLD world.com. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or maybe another favorite podcast app, don't forget to hit the follow button. When you follow along with the podcast, each new episode, whether it's Tuesdays or these bonus episodes you sometimes see pop up on Fridays, will automatically download for you in your podcast app or your podcast feed. It's a great strategy to make sure you don't miss something that might pop up later in the year. And of course, if you have a moment and are feeling extra helpful today, I'd always appreciate it if you leave a review on the podcast. It helps other people find the podcast. We have over 100 reviews on Apple Podcasts. Whether you're an Apple person, Spotify, or another favorite, every 5-star review or sentence or 2 review helps make sure the podcast shows up when other people are searching for topics like EdTech or education or AP success, like today's episode. Have a great rest of your podcast listening today if you've got another episode queued up to dive into. And if you are ready for more EdTech content, stay tuned for Tuesday's new episode of the Easy EdTech podcast.